Darcy Fink. I'm from the band Hue, living in Toronto here. Like, we just love the feeling of, being on stage with a bunch of people, a bunch of groups of our friends hanging out, and it's mainly about the fun. To make a living would be ideal, just to kind of squeeze by and not have to work at a bar or do any kind of other physical labor work. Being a musician full-time would be really fun because the best part is just being creative and creating something that people like, that you can enjoy yourself doing. It's, yeah, I don't know, you kind of really have to be immersed into it to kind of get the feel for it. There's so many good bands coming through, and it's really tough to get that draw of people. But at the same time, it's a whole experience, right, in what you're doing. But it's one of those things, if there's something that clicks with people that they want to come out, whether it's not. So it's if people like your stuff, you're gonna get those. You're gonna get the crowd. But you've got to try anyway, right? That's a good point. Yeah, that's actually true in many situations. There's a lot of bands out there who just have friends, and kind of drag them out. It's like, come see my band, just because they're friends, right? Of course they're gonna support you, right? All your friends are gonna support you. But just the fact that even if you get like a few new faces in there, it's good to see that. And if people are in the other room listening and they actually kind of poke their head and kind of dig it and actually decide to come check it out, that's enough for me. I think that it's really good. Even if people come, if you don't see your friends or certain people come back, friends of friends, if you don't see them come back, you're doing something wrong. But for the most part, I know what you're saying. Like. Yeah, I know what you're saying, how you can just bring friends out. A fan would be someone who is willing to listen to your music. Someone who likes it, puts it on the record player and digs it. That's a fan. Friends, mostly we have a lot of friends that we get out to the show, and it's just word of mouth. I don't know, you have to be a somewhat good band, I think, to bring that draw. You just gotta find what people like, and if you're a good band, people are gonna come.
Would you prefer to have a show with 100 friends or 100 fans?
Well, our friends are our fans. It's really hard to kind of be able to make money off of anything. People are only willing to put so much money into music, and it's to see bands and to pay for records and and all that kind of stuff. So it's really hard unless you tap some kind of label or distribution where it's kind of can actually bring the mass of people to be able to just hear your music. It would be great, because as soon as people hear that stuff, if they're not aware and it's not everywhere, it's really hard for people to find something. Because there's so many good bands in Toronto and good stuff that you're already exposed to. It's really hard to keep up, like, unless you have that kind of somebody helping you out and exposing your music. But as for the long run, you end up paying more as a musician, just because you're paying for like instruments, new pedals all the time, strings. Even just owning a van in Toronto. I don't know if anybody knows how crazy insurance is, especially if you're under 25. It's really expensive to own a van in Toronto. And like recording is pretty expensive. It's good to do it out of your own house. A lot of people are doing that now because it's a lot cheaper. But still, there's initial costs for pretty much everything. So it's really hard to kind of even save up enough. Even if you make $100 a show, $200 a show, it takes a lot of shows to kind of build back. The amount you spend. It depends what you work out. That's obviously the case. But if you're bringing people out, and you're not, it's really hard to get people to spend more than $5 to come to a show. Like, people are willing to do that, but it's just especially if you are a band that just brings most of your friends, right? You don't want to charge your friends more than $5. You don't want to do that. So you want to have your place where you kind of like give back to your friends, like not making them pay. pays so much to get in, sort of thing. Or even have a guest list or whatnot. But yeah, like that's just the way it is at bars in Toronto. You know, if you wanna make a little more buck, you know, you gotta. There's not really much you can do for bar sales. The bar industry is what it is, and paying more for a beer than you have to get in. It's just the whole exposure thing. There's a lot of good bands out there that I've seen play tons and tons of shows, and you know, they kind of get to that certain point that it's really hard to kind of get past and bring more and more people out. So you know, like you could play in the same bars the same day of every week, and you have a huge crowd. But the thing about the new people coming in and actually, you know, spreading the word. So it's yeah, one problem is I guess exposure for the masses. You know, a lot of bigger mainstream stuff just kind of comes through as champion, and it's kind of hard to get a lot of people, especially younger people, to kind of get into some good local Toronto music. I would say Facebook is probably the best. You know, whenever we mention them now, it's good to see a little box with their name in it. That's always good. I think a lot of people do check out the Now magazine, but if they haven't heard of you, it's kind of like skimming over a bunch of bands that you've never really heard of, unless you hear from word of mouth. So Facebook is probably a little bit better because it's through friends and word of mouth initially. And that's kind of where if somebody's like, oh, I've heard of that band, that's when they're going to come to the show. You know, they don't just read it and look at your name. If it's a catchy name, no, they're just going to come to the show because it's a catchy name. And, you know, there's you know, if you're good, you know, there's factor, and there's, you know, indie pool to kind of, you know, get that little bit of help, you know, but it's really all about, like, if your music's kind of good, you know, you kind of have to go through the whole judging process, but it's, you know, we've been denied factor before, so, you know, we're just, like, trying to get along to that. So there is help out there. It's just, you gotta really be into the music and really gotta put the extra effort in to actually get some. Good luck. Good luck. It's fun, but it's tough.